Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 458. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
This one's going to be a little shorter of an episode. I've actually got a work trip coming up this week, and I want to make sure to get an episode out and get, one out with a little bit more frequency than we've been doing lately. So we're going to do a short little hour and a half episode. We're going to talk about Arrow. We're going to talk about The Flash. We are also going to talk about some of the DC Rebirth rumors that have been coming out. Bleeding Cool released a bunch of those this week. She had a little thought about TV crossovers and stuff like that. So it's going to be a little bit of a casual conversation about some of these things. Our next episode, we're going to continue and we're going to talk about iZombie. We're going to jump back into some comic discussion, including the promised Batman and Robin Eternal discussion. We got a whole bunch of stuff we're going to talk about next week, but that's kind of where we're at right now. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what is going on this month at DCBService.com?
Bundles, bundles, bundles. And thank you, DCBS. They're continuing the Vertigo bundle. And it's really neat because it's not just the brand new titles. They're including the full 15 titles that are the Vertigo issues right now. So you're going to get Astro City 34. You're going to get Fables Wolves Among Us number 16 right along with this great bundle. And of course, they're giving us 50% off. Regular price for all 15 titles would have been $59.85. DCBS price, it's $29.85.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they got the deals of the week as usual. One of them that's really cool. You saw that Justice League Gods and Monsters movie, Jim. Did you get to read the comic book material that went along with it?
A little bit, yeah.
They have a hardcover collecting all of it now. I really recommend this if you really enjoyed this movie. It expands the universe. It's J.M. DeMatteis, Bruce Timm, Tony Silas, Derek Robertson. It's a prequel to the DC Universe movie. And what it has is Justice League Gods and Monsters, Batman #1, Superman #1, Wonder Woman #1, and the Justice League Gods and Monsters 1 through 3. It's a 200-page hardcover, $22.99 regularly, 50% off, only $11.49. I really love this because it's new material. It's material that expands that universe. Prez trade paperback. We were big fans of this Prez miniseries. This collects the whole thing. It's Volume 1, Corn Dog in Chief. 50% off, only $7.49. If you missed this miniseries, it's a really cool miniseries that modernizes the Prez concept to today's world. And I can't shout it out enough as being something really, really cool that you should be checking out. They have other new releases like Swamp Thing, Trade Paperback Volume 7, Season's End, 45% off, only $9.34. Basically, InStockTrades.com is your collected edition source, whether you're looking for hardcovers, trade paperback, news stories, previously released stories. InStockTrades.com is your go-to source to get these things at a discount. And I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the television shows we discuss on today's episode. If you haven't watched the shows, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some TV.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
Jim, right before we started recording, we started talking about some of the news that happened this week because you've been out of town. So a lot of this are things that you probably haven't heard. You were mentioning that you heard rumors about a Flash and Supergirl television crossover. That's a lock. That's actually going to happen. So there is going to be a Flash and Supergirl crossover episode. I believe it's airing on Supergirl. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it's going to be on both. I think it's going to be on Supergirl, where Flash is going to be a guest star.
Well, and it's got to be on Supergirl because it looks like Supergirl takes place later than the Flash series. Because if Superman is already established hero, in her this is quote unquote an older Barry Allen as the Flash.
Why does it have to be? Just because I'm not saying you're wrong, but I guess what I'm saying is nothing in Flash and Arrow has indicated a potential time frame for the Man of Steel. So I don't know that the fact that they haven't referenced it is an indicator of the fact that they take place before.
Well, it's the only thing I go by is two factors. One, the term metahuman was born on The Flash when all this stuff started happening. And Arrow even said, hey, this is something completely new for us. So if there was a Kryptonian out there the concept of metahumans would have been out there and would have been something more known. So I'm thinking, it could only be like 1 or 2 years down the line, but still it's something different. But yeah.
The only thing I don't like about that, and I don't think it's a bad idea. Like, I mean, I love the crossover idea, so I'm glad it's happening. The only thing I don't like about that is if you immediately put Supergirl at a different timeline, that is kind of limiting on what you can do in the future. In the sense that if let's say it goes gangbusters and it's a win-win for both television programs. There's a boost in viewership because of the fact that this crossover happened. Keeping them both on the same timeline leaves open some possibilities to include both in each other's crossover worlds in the future. If you limit her and say she's in a different timeline, you can't really do that.
True. I agree with you, but it's right now, that's how I kind of see it. I don't know because you think about it, if Superman existed, he would have been referenced at least once in either of those two universes.
I think you're putting too much weight on Superman.
You can never put too much weight on Superman.
No. I think in this universe you are, though, because he's not the main character in any of these shows. And honestly, if they put too much weight on Superman, they're making a huge mistake. This show should be about the characters that are stars of the show. I'm taking it this is more going to be like a Constantine crossover, where it's John Constantine. He's been traveling around. This is the guy that was on the TV show that we all watched. I mean, clearly it takes place after Constantine because of the fact the show doesn't exist anymore. But, I mean, timeline-wise on it, I took it like it was happening now, real time. And everything that we saw in his television show happened to him predating this. So I think Supergirl is going to be the same thing. And Flash. I hope. I don't, you know what? I don't care either way. Here's the thing. When you throw out your idea, I'm like, I don't care. It's great because they're having a crossover. Yeah. So if it takes place a couple years down the road for them, great. I guess I don't think there's, the one area where I think we veer off is, I think you think there's some necessary need to that. I don't. I don't think Superman means that you have to do that for either show. Because Superman is very loosely referenced in Supergirl anyway. We just know the dude's in existence and he's been doing it. I don't know that means it's the movie Superman. Because there's already been a number of things that Supergirl's done that would make me indicate that it might be its own continuity. It doesn't have to be linked to the movies. I don't know that it necessarily, with the fact of them being different cities and things like that, if that means that they have to, I don't know. I don't know that Flash and Arrow had to have many Superman references in order for that to be valid.
And to be honest, if they want to run same timeline, I'm not going to complain. Because like you, I want to see this crossover. I want to see this because I'd like to see this TV continuity all be meshed. And I don't want this Superman to be the movie Superman. I want this to be the TV Superman. I want the TV universe to have its own continuity. We have right now Legends of Tomorrow, Flash, Arrow, all one continuity. We're pulling Supergirl now into that continuity. I'm happy with that. These are just thoughts that are going through my head as to, well, me, I got the timeline kind of guy. Where does this fit in exactly? I'm one of those kind of guys, but I'm not so locked into stone that it has to be that. Mm-hmm. If they just have him on there and they don't make any comments towards it, I technically really wouldn't care. I'd be okay as long as it's a good episode. As long as Barry is Barry in the episode and it's, they don't tweak or change, which I highly doubt that would happen because the way the character is being written, he is absolutely wonderful in his story, and his energy and his positive, just that vibe that he has is going to so fit so well in Supergirl. So I'm seeing them pull in Barry Allen. I'm just, in my head, I automatically go towards continuity type of stuff like that and timelines and all the craziness that comes with that.
The one thing I don't like about that is the fact that you can't have her guest star on either Flash or Arrow in the future.
Right.
Unless it's a time travel story.
Exactly. And that's
where I think it's limiting. That's the only reason why I don't like that concept, other than I'm geeking out at the fact that Flash is going to be on Supergirl.
Yeah.
Because it does level exactly what you and I were hoping for, the fact that they're letting these be continual worlds. I actually give the networks and showrunners props for making that happen, because it's not something you hear of. Forget who owns what networks and things like that. Having characters jump networks to do crossovers is not something you hear of very often anymore. And the fact that it actually, in the past, if you look at $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman, when the Bionic Woman jumped a network, they actually could not have crossovers between the two of them anymore, and there had to be a new love interest on both sides because of the fact that you couldn't do that anymore. So I really love the fact that we can do that nowadays. Network ownership's a little bit different this time around, but I do like the fact that they're going to be on.
Amen.
I think it's going to be good for both shows. And and for the fans, it's really great.
Yeah,
So I'm geeking out.
Yeah, this is a cool thing for us, the fans, I think. So I'm looking forward to it.
Teen Titans. That show, it looks like it's kind of in a development whirlwind right now. TNT did not pick it up. DC still looks like they're behind it and want to shop it around to get it out there. You know, DC Warner, DC Entertainment want to get that out there. I do hope that Teen Titans does come to fruition, though, because I love the concept of having a Teen Titans show out there.
Oh, no. I want this. Come on.
I do, too. Yeah. You know what, though? I don't mind that, you know, it's one of those things where it's back to the drawing board. Let's take the concepts that worked out of it. Let's repitch it. Let's get it to an... You want a network that's going to let it become what it needs to become. And if you take a look at the success of Supergirl, Flash, and Arrow, you know, in particular, and Gotham, you know, is your big lineup of your DC superhero television shows right now. Those are really doing well because of just how well they were developed and how well they are allowed to breathe and become the shows that they are. So I hope Teen Titans, if it comes out, let's have it be that instead of some of the other shows that have failed across, you know, comics. So I don't know. I'm happy to be patient on that. Can we talk a little Rebirth? Because there's been a lot of rumors. I don't know how much of these are true. It'd be kind of fun to chat about some of these. One of the things that came out of Rebirth is Batman would be a bi-weekly book, potentially with Tom King writing. And this is all from Bleeding Cool, by the way. I do want to say that these are Bleeding Cool rumors. Batman would start over as a number one. Detective would stay monthly, but Batman would be launched as a bi-weekly book with Tom King potentially as the writer. Thoughts?
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, that's my thought. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Tom King writing. Come on. They get, you know, bi-weekly. That's what, twice a month then. So more Batman titles, more Batman books with him writing. Sure. We know Snyder's going to be a detective. So yes. Only thing I worry about that is just, I don't want to burn the man out. So let's, you know, I don't want to hurt him. You know, if this is too much, let's keep the people who are amazing at their job. Let's keep them happy. Yeah, I'm for this. It's kind of curious, you know, makes you wonder who is going to be in. Is it going to be two different Batmen? Is it going to be two different people in the cowl? Is there going to be Mecha Bat on one and Bruce in the other, or vice versa, or a combination of the two? You know, it's so. Yeah, I'm definitely in on this one. Yeah.
It could be just Bruce, though. I mean, if you think about it, look at how many Batman titles there have been in the past where you've had multiple Batman books. I mean, it's not unheard of that we've had 4 Batman monthly titles running at a time. So, I mean, to have Detective and Batman, with Batman being bi-weekly, it's not far off from past practices.
Right.
It's just a different way of looking at it. I actually quite like the continuity of having the same writer doing that.
Yes.
And I don't know, with writing, what they're going to have to do is the art is the issue. I think more than anything, your writers that have, you know, the story concepts and things like that are able to pull that off. I mean, it's a workhorse load, but, you know, Tom King's already doing, look how many books he's already doing a month. So, I mean, you know, doing 2 Batman issues in a month is certainly something he's capable in his output to do. It just, the art is really the piece.
Yeah, the art's going to be, that's the tough one. And you know, they've had a couple with the weekly series where it's different art teams working, and they have different teams that work well together. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that's the kind of mindset they go with this, especially Eternal. You know, you look at just how for a weekly book, yeah, you can tell there's different art teams, but it's not anything jarring that makes you go, whoa, you know, back and forth. It's a nice, you know, each team has a good fit with each other. So hopefully they're going to go that route with it. And, you know, Though I am also worried about what happens to Tom King's other work, you know, because I don't want to lose him on Grayson. I don't want to lose the Grayson title because I love that series.
Can we clarify something, though? We're talking about one more issue. I mean, you're acting like they're giving him a line. I mean, that's it would be the same title, so I would imagine you would be continuing the same story. You would just be doing it at a faster pace. He's got the writing chops for that. Every bit the writing chops for that.
Yeah, again, he's an amazing writer, and I don't want him to get burned out. I don't want to lose this guy because that's how much I love his style. You know,
well, I would imagine
that's my concern. I'm worried about him. I don't want him to burn out.
Unfortunately, I would imagine we'd probably lose in a Mega Man.
I think so. I think that's the title that would go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and I don't want to see that because that's another title that I'm loving. But I don't know if the numbers were saved. You know, if we got enough out of it when this whole Rebirth stuff happens. If Omega Men will be included with the Rebirth.
Yeah, I'm happy for any Tom King work. Remember, and I do want to keep in mind, these are rumors from Bleeding Cool, so I don't know how true these are. They're obviously getting the lay of the land. I just, you know what, if this kind of stuff is what gets me excited, and that's why I wanted to talk about these. I like announcements. Announcements, when we start talking about them, is when I start getting excited for a direction. So that's why I wanted to follow up our discussion last episode with this, because this kind of stuff during the week, I'm like, all right, now we're starting to flesh things out a little bit. Here's some potential new titles, and I want to talk about some other potential writers as well on work. But remember the Superman, the original, The Reign of the Superman, Superman's original concept by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster?
Yeah.
There's rumors of a title called The Superman. Now, Bleeding Cool's linking it to that original concept. I don't know if it is or not. There is a Man of Steel book that's rumored. New Green Lantern, starring the current Power Ring, Jessica Cruz, using the Power Ring from Earth 3. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Now, these are rumors. These are not locked-in titles, but these are rumored new comics according to Bleeding Cool. So I do want to put a caveat on these. These are different than traditional announcements in the sense that these are things that people have heard from people who have heard. So, and I'm not diminishing Bleeding Cool for this. I find this stuff quite interesting. I enjoy seeing rumors. I do want to clarify, though, just for an ethical standpoint, we are just throwing out rumors right now. Pete Tomasi as the new Superman bi-weekly writer. Yeah, I hope that's a thing.
I think you can tell I'm on board for that one.
Yeah, you know, he is one of those names that it's interesting when you hear Pete Tomasi's name. You don't hear him in that same upper echelon range. And I think it's because of the fact that he came through the editorial ranks and then became, you know, the writer on that end. He is every bit. When he is on a book, every book that he's on, I love. I mean, this goes back to you and I were like salivating over his work on Batman and Robin. But, you know, when he took over like Superman and Wonder Woman, he's the guy, you put him on a book, he will make it work. And make it work to the point where it's a must-read title. Anything he's on, I just gravitate to, I enjoy, and really get a full, rich experience. He is great at character drama. He is great at understanding how to make a supporting cast essential and that you care about them just as much as the main character. So you put him on a book like Superman bi-weekly, I'm in, like Flynn. I think that's awesome. And he, you know, I hope this would be the title that would catapult him to be one of those names.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's baffling to me that his name isn't always in that upper category. You know, like if you're Grant Morrison's and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You know, your Scott Snyder's. Pete Tomasi's just a great writer. So I hope this for him is true. Either way, I'm just glad to hear his name associated with, whether it's that or not, with Rebirth. We need books from him in Rebirth. And I do hope it's that.
Oh God, yeah, and like you, I agree with you. He's on my list. I've got a list of writers that if their name's on a book title, I jump on it. I will pick it up, regardless of, you know. You could tell me, yeah, Pete Tomasi is writing the Sunshine Ponies. Okay, I'm gonna pick up the Sunshine Ponies. You know, just because it's got his name on it. If he's associated with something, I'm going to go with it. And I don't, you know, again, Superman, yes, amen. And I'm so glad you mentioned about what supporting cast, because that for me was always one of the things I really loved about his writing on the Bat universe, because of how much, you know, he made Gotham a part of the story, how much he made all the cast, how much made Gotham PD, Alfred, you know, Gordon, everybody, just the supporting cast was just as strong in that title. Now with him on Superman, because Superman's got some great characters around him, I hope that's a true rumor, and I would love to see that.
This one I'm totally geeking over, and I hope it's true. Rumors of a new Justice Society of America ongoing. Now, the interesting part about this one, according to the rumor, again, this is a rumor, this would be a team brought forward in time, young, with the full cast of characters, but it would be similar to what's going on in Titans Hunt, where nobody remembers them, and that will be explained in the story. But there may perhaps be a link to Titans Hunt, and this is part of the rumor, in the fact that what's going on with Titans Hunt may be a part of what's happening with this team as well.
Ooh, like kind of how we had with the Convergence story, where the JSA they had that one last run in the two-part Convergence story, where they were made young again and they fought through in Convergence, so kind of pulling that team forward. So we're going to get a classic JSA in present-day society. I'm looking, that's a good one.
I hope that's a thing. Teen Titans, Damian Wayne leading the team.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Come on, how awesome would that be?
A Trinity comic, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. I wonder if this would be, and the rumor seems to indicate this might be a replacement for Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman, Superman. I don't know if that's in fact the case, but that in and of itself is interesting to me, with the fact that we've got the Trinity being such a big factor in the movie, having them in a book. Again, writers pretty critical on that, because I think what's working with both of the titles that I just mentioned is you've got great writers on both of those titles. Those books are really interesting and working to me because they're very reflective of the current storylines going on in each of those characters' monthly books. What makes it interesting is these writers do their research on the drama that's going on in each of their worlds. You know, Wonder Woman, Superman, for example. What's working so great about that? It's the fact that everything going on in their books converges with these two characters and is addressed in their relationship in those books. The one thing I do hope to see out of this, and I do hope there's an announcement, I would love to see still another Superman, Wonder Woman title, just because I really love the relationship between them. But the Trinity book, I think, would be very interesting with the three of them.
Definitely. That definitely would be a solid one. And if that came in and they replaced the other two, I would be sad to see the other two go, because I want the Wonder Woman Superman title, because I don't want the super couple to end now. I really want it to come back. And they keep teasing the possibility that maybe it's not completely over, with some of the stuff going on in Action Comics and in Wonder Woman Superman, so it's not completely dead. I think there's a chance maybe they can fan the flames and we can get the super couple back. But if we lose the super couple, I would like to see the Trinity, because you have three friends, three equals, especially if they're doing Bruce Wayne, who's back in the cowl. That would be a really cool story of the two people who he pretty much could trust. He trusts in the superhero universe, helping him get his groove back, or helping the three of them working together, each one of them having their own issues, especially Clark and Lois, Clark and Diana, dealing with the former relationship, Bruce getting back into the groove of things. I think that could be a really cool story being told.
I agree with you. It's a very interesting time right now with what's going on. I just wanted to talk about those because I don't know if you're in the same boat I'm in. I largely suspect that you are. I like when they do events that kind of spice things up, shake things up, rework titles that maybe aren't working, mainly because I want this to be around. And I know it's kind of a weird thing to say, but when you take a look at your sales numbers, which is part of the responsibility of these companies, they have to take a look at their sales numbers and go, okay, we had this big booming success when it first started. Things have started to fizzle in certain areas. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that. I'm a reader. I'm here for the purpose of enjoying the product. I don't care if a book is a top seller or the lowest seller, except in the sense that we use a Mega Man as an example. When you hear books like that I think are really innovative and interesting, and you hear about them being canceled, I get sad because I enjoy that kind of product. I enjoy the risk of putting out a Mega Man book and the quality behind a title like that. It becomes a special title. And I look at that as kind of like a Starman book where, that one had an 80-issue run, and it was so great because it was a character I'm really into Starman, and was really into it for 80 issues. It's kind of a unique character concept at DC, and to see those become a hit and really be something special and different is always great. When you take a look at their sales numbers and they kind of look back and go, okay, these titles just aren't working financially, I like the idea of spicing things up a little bit to try and draw in a new crowd. So I don't have a problem with these things. I like this bit, though, when we start getting rumors, whether those are true or not. I do get excited for name attachment to books. I want to know what they're doing concept-wise. A bi-weekly Batman book gets me a little bit more interested just because of the fact that that's more of that story in a month. Instead of waiting 30 days for a story, with a writer that I'm really enjoying, being able to get that bi-weekly with the concerns you're talking about of sustainability. I want it sustained. I don't mind if it's two art teams, if they're following what they're doing so well with the weekly format, cool. Bi-weekly Batman with a great continuing story with a writer that I really respect is something that's interesting. Superman, the same thing. Continuing story. I like the immediacy factor of this. I think it's really cool. It's what I like about the digital right now. Even though the digital are little short snippets when you get them, I like getting weekly snippets of story. and continuing reading them on my Comixology. I get most of. I don't buy any of the digital releases, even though they release them in the monthly paper format. I buy them weekly as they come out because I really enjoy that different delivery method. I don't want all my books that way, but I do like that idea. I like the idea of having a couple of bi-weeklies that are done by really talented creators who are delivering that kind of story instead of doing 2 more titles. You know, like, for example, a Batman and a Shadow of the Bat. Right. I'd rather have the same writer continuing the story. If they can sustain that, I think it'd be great. So I'm all in for that concept. It's a good way to do it. I just hope that works out. I just think it's interesting. So, I don't know. This stuff gets me excited. I get more jazzed when I start hearing some of that fleshing out. There were some rumored cancellations, actually. I probably should talk about those. Starfire is rumored to go. Midnighter's rumored to go. Black Canary is rumored to go. How true those things are, I don't know. But those are some of the rumored titles that are up for cancellation. Yeah.
You say 3 titles I'm enjoying.
And you always know those are casualties when these type of things happen.
Yeah, you know something's got to go. You know, unfortunately, because they can't have 1,000 titles, right. So you do know they're going to have to. You know, my whole thing is I wish, you know, when you get rid of a title, you somehow find a way to keep the character around. You know, whether it's putting them in a team book or doing some type of something else. Because if you get rid of Midnighter, he is one of those characters that I personally love him. I know there's a lot of people who probably never read a Midnighter book. You know, he's never been one of those mainstream type of people. And Canary, I think she's out there in popularity, but you know, it's, again, she's not a character that a lot of people know of or have, you know, dealings with, and the same can be said about Starfire. These are characters that are known, they're characters that are out there, but I think giving them the shot at their own title was cool, you know, but I want to see them continue, but I think those characters do well on teams. I think they could take these people, put them on different team books, and we can try something, especially if Titans Hunt goes into something where, you know, they're continuing, because they could pull Star into Titans that way. You know, if, you know, she starts having those same flashbacks that everybody else is having, maybe she can get pulled into that, you know, into that title, and Canary can get pulled into some type of Justice League or a spy type of story, because she's got some of the backgrounds, you know, in that way. And Midnighter, of course, you know, Midnighter's Midnighter. You can throw him in a lot of different places. So I'm hoping we don't lose the characters.
Midnighter's been fantastic in Grayson. So he's a character that, you know, is great as a supporting cast or reoccurring. He's actually more reoccurring cast, but I think that is a book that's really benefited from his appearances in there. And I think the handling of him in that book has been really top notch.
Amen.
So he's a character I'd like to see. You know, why don't we jump real quick and start talking about Flash and Arrow, if we could? Can we talk about Arrow first? I don't know that to me. I don't know that it really matters. We're going to do a little shorter episode this week, so I want to make sure to start getting into some of the TV programs we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. But wow, a lot of happenings in Arrow this season. One of the things I'm just going to kind of blanketly say this. When we were talking earlier and having the debate about Supergirl and all that, one of the cool things about this is I've become very protective of these programs as View. So we both have very passionate opinions, and it's not that either one of us is right or wrong. We both care greatly about the DC TV product output right now. I've gotten to the point where I'm like you. I don't care if they're linked to the movies or not. It really is irrelevant to me. I think their universe in the TV is so tight, but also expands and adds these amazingly cool characters. Every time you turn around, they're adding, I mean, Curtis Holt, let's talk about that. It's not Michael Holt, but it's Curtis Holt. You know, they're building a Mr. Terrific on Arrow right now and doing a really bang-up job of it. I really enjoy him as a character. For the Felicity drama that's going on, I think they've really done a great job with that character. Overwatch, I love that she's got a code name now. You know, it's all... Go ahead.
not only does she have the Overwatch code name, because when he first calls her that, I'm like, oh man. And then he goes, I was going to go with Oracle, but it was taken. I cheered. I hit pause. I rewound that section a couple times. Every single time, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. They acknowledged the existence of Oracle. And I was just like, that is awesome. Just a little wink and a nod to those of us who know her, who know who Oracle is. Because the whole time I'm sitting there, when Felicity got put in the wheelchair, I'm like, they're doing the Oracle story. They're going to make her Oracle. I was hooping and hollering, and then he calls her Overwatch, and it was just that little pain in the heart. But then they completely cleared it and refreshed it for me. I was like, thank you, whoever thought of that, whichever person said, hey, we need to do this. Good job. You get a whoosh from the sensei on that one.
That is exactly why earlier, though, when you were talking about Supergirl having to take place later for the Flash. That was one of the Oracle thing. I loved the wink and the nod without being beholden to it. I think those concepts work better when you're like, oh man, what a geek out moment. They've acknowledged Oracle in that moment, but they haven't shackled themselves by it. It was exactly what we need as geeky fans. Superman's use in Supergirl, what I've really loved about it is it's a way to show her connection to Superman and to build this idea of their relationship without them being forced to limit themselves by Superman's story. Because it's like I would geek out at having him on the show, and I hope at some point in time they do that. I can't imagine them not figuring out a way to have Superman on Supergirl at some point. But by doing what they're doing, they're really showing a relationship depth with these two, but not in a cool way that allows Supergirl freedom to explore so many different villains, so many different character concepts, and to become its own thing without being locked to that. That's what I thought the Oracle thing did as well. It gave us a wink and a nod to the fact that they're not trying to make Felicity into Oracle Light. She's still Felicity Smoke, the same Felicity that we've known and love. I think story has really dictated that she needs a code name. But at the same time, they're acknowledging to the fans that, yes, this is similar to what happened with Oracle, but not. We're not giving up what made Felicity and what has made Felicity such a unique and interesting character on her own.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And it's, with... Felicity is Felicity. She is Overwatch, and I'm happy with that, and I'm glad that, but it's, I don't know. It's funny because as you're talking, I'm sitting there nodding my head, agreeing with what you're saying about how I do want to have this be a giant connected universe. I do want to have everything, together. So it's, as I said, I'm okay. I would be okay if they were just saying everything's going on right now and there's no time jump or anything like that, because that would allow us to have Supergirl in the title. That would have maybe even Superman or maybe even an appearance of Batman, in this TV universe. They could do stuff like that, and I would be happy with it. So right now I have no complaints on the continuity of this universe. I have no complaints, and I think that's awesome. Because it's giving us what we want. It's, as you said, it's that wink and a nod to the others. Superman, with Superman's appearances in Supergirl. It's an acknowledgement, a wink and a nod, but it doesn't take away from the story is about Supergirl. The story is about Felicity Smoke, not Oracle. The story is about, the Arrow. It's about they're focusing on who these people are, not just trying to pull in everybody at once. This is who they're not being kind of scatterbrained in how they're presenting this. So I'm very happy with what they're doing.
They're also not using Superman and Batman as a crutch.
Right.
Like, we're going to do a cheap stunt. We're going to have Superman on the show to get viewers. You don't need to. The shows are already good enough on their own, and drawing their own audiences on their own. You don't need that. And honestly, it would detract from those shows to rely on those characters in a way. I'm gonna say something here. The comics could learn a lot from how these shows are developing characters that aren't your big two.
Right.
Because these shows have done an amazing job of doing that. And I don't mean that as a slam on the comics. What I mean is these shows have been marketed in a way that they've attracted a unique audience to them, because they clearly aren't just comic fans that are watching these shows. Not by the numbers. You're attracting a different sort of audience. So I would love to see comics. I don't want comics beholden to television ever. I never want that. I really don't. I love the idea that the comics, where is it? Maybe it was Bleeding Cool where I read this, where they said something about the comics being the leader and they're not the follower. And you need that. 100% need that. From a marketing standpoint, not from story quality. Story quality is already there in the comics. My frustration is always that these titles are not marketed to a new crowd. And these TV shows have somehow made it all work. I don't know what the answer is for comics. I would love to see the comics reach just a new audience. That's constantly my frustration. I don't have the answers. It's very easy for me as a fan to throw that out there and everyone kind of go, okay, here he goes again with that, but what's the answer? I don't have one. What I want to see is experimentation in trying to reach a new audience. That's what I want to see. I want to see marketing towards a new audience where they try. Just to try and hit a new crowd. And I don't see that often with the comics, and I would love to see that because of the success of these shows.
Yeah, and it's funny because of all the people I know that watch Flash, Green Arrow, Supergirl, only one of them actually collects comics. All the other people that I talk to about these TV shows don't actually collect comics. They're fans of this genre, the superhero genre. They see the movies, they watch the TV shows, but they've never actually collected the book. And there's been a couple of them I said, hey, if you want to borrow a book, you can read the original stories. And no, I'm good with this. Walking Dead, prime example. I've got the deluxe editions, and people come to me and ask me, hey, what happened actually in the book? I'm like, well, do you want to read it? I'm like, oh no, you can just tell me. They don't want to take I don't think they don't want to take the time to actually read the book. Or there is still a lot of stigma out there that if you watch a TV show, you're just watching TV, that's cool. But if you read a comic book, you read comic books. There is still that negative stigma out there on us, and I think that's the biggest hurdle for pulling people in.
Are those people readers in general, though?
One of them is, and that's why I was actually surprised that she never wanted to actually borrow the book, because and it's funny, she reads Grant Morrison's actual books, not his comic books. And then we talk about whenever there's using a property or different, hey, you want to she was watching Constantine. I'm like, oh, you got to watch Constantine, you'll like that. And she did while it was on and all that. But it's kind of interesting that there are readers out there, but they're not reading comic books. There is that stigma.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I think and I should clarify that when I say that I'd like to see comics reach out to a new audience, I don't know necessarily that it's always the TV audience is the one that I'm talking about. I think there's a potential audience in the gaming crowd. I think there's a potential audience all over the place. I don't have the answer. I just don't see the outreach to a new audience. And I don't know. I really believe, and I've said this many times, and I'll stick with this one, comics need to somehow develop a modern age newsstand crowd. The casual crowd that will browse through digital media and pick up titles. And I don't know what the answer is to do that. I would love to see some experimentation. It isn't going to be us. No. Whatever that format is that I'm talking about right now, we are not going to be the ones that are going to pick that up. And really, it shouldn't be us. It shouldn't dilute the current comic crowd that likes comic shops and likes online ordering and likes your collections and still likes the paper. It is the digital crowd, and I don't know what the answer is to that. And I don't know that I should. If you follow what I'm saying there, it shouldn't be something where I go, oh yeah, that's the coolest thing, it'll be great for me. No, that's the mistake. It shouldn't be for me. It really should be for that crowd, that untapped crowd that would like the stories being told, but the delivery medium, the way that they get it, the immediacy that they get it, what it looks like, is very different than your traditional comic shop crowd. We really are always going to be our kind of core geeky group, and there's nothing wrong with that. The newsstand crowd needs to be your mass market crowd, your people that aren't going to be us. And it's going to be a different sort of audience. And maybe to a certain extent it is some of the people that you're talking about, Jim, maybe that won't pick up a hardcover when you hand it to them. But on the other hand, if it pops up on their phone, they would read it.
Right.
So how do you get that to that crowd and get them interested in picking it up and get it delivered to them in a way that feels like it's right for that crowd? I don't know what the answer is to that. I would just love to see something innovative being done, multiple somethings innovative being done to test the waters and try to find that sweet spot. Because I think that's untapped. That's where our cancellations of certain titles would start to shift. I think, because you would start seeing some titles that would take a digital life. And maybe it's something where fans like you and I, it's a title like, really? That's the one that's taken off. Who would expect that? I would love to see that kind of stuff happening where certain things, certain concepts develop a newsstand audience that we'd never see before. And I don't know what the answer is yet. I want to see more experimentation. That's really all I want to see is more experimentation. And I really mean that in the most open-ended way. Anyway, back to Arrow and talking about Arrow. Felicity, let's talk, seeing as we're already talking about her, let's jump to that. So Felicity had this tragedy, and I was so worried the target was on Felicity. I'm so glad that Felicity is alive. I like what they're doing with her with a chair. So I'm going to go right to the concept. Does Felicity have to stay in the chair?
One, she doesn't have to, and they could they'll be able to very easily explain her getting out of the chair with the technology they have. Yep. But especially with this last episode, with when she was presenting for the board, and at first she was clumsy, but then later she's developing just who it's kind of like with Barbara Gordon and Oracle. Let's throw that comparison out there. How by the end, Barbara, the chair was part of her. It became, it wasn't her weakness anymore. It was just who she is. So with Felicity, they could keep her in the chair. They could pull her from the chair. They could have it be a strange tech that heals her. They could, there's a lot of different ways they could do it. But I think for a while, I would say keep her in the chair.
Agreed.
Maybe season finale this season or season finale next season, you have a thing where Felicity is walking or is about to take her first step. They could kind of do a end of season, tease for what's going to happen next with her. But I think their handling of the character, and again, they're allowing her to develop, allowing her to become comfortable and be her own. It's actually really cool. And I liked how they talked about modifying the layer so it had ramps, and then they start showing all the different ramps in there, and they show her just smoothly going through from one section to another. And it's it is a really great message about her character, about who she is, how strong she is. That was a great sequence where she was having visions of their old self as her doubt, and she basically finally fought that back, and just because of how strong she is. It's one of those things you need to see, that she is a part of that team. She is a vital key part of that team, and this is why. This is who she is. This is her strength. I'm very happy with what they're doing with her, and I say keep her in the chair, heal her, do a whatnot, do a mixture of the two. I'm cool with it as long as they keep Felicity being as cool as Felicity is.
Yeah, amen to everything you just said. I really don't care. I just thought it was an interesting topic. Do we have a passionate answer either way? One thing I really like about this show is everything's story driven. Yeah. So whatever they do with it, keep her in the chair, out of the chair, whatever they wind up doing, it's going to be story driven when they do it. I'm just happy and content to go with the story. I really love what they're doing with her. You referenced this week's episode. I honestly thought that was a great episode because very much what we've seen on the show, and I think what works about that character is the two different Felicities. I think we all have those two different people inside us. The one that when you kind of check all of your, we've all got baggage, right? Our own personal baggage. I've got my own baggage, that make me question myself and, lend to my insecurities and things like that. But there comes a point in time where when it comes down to doing business, whether it's, looking out for friends and family, whether it's work, whatever, you hit that in the zone moment where all of that other nonsense doesn't apply. You're just in your zone, your comfort level, your strengths take over, and you just kind of do your thing. We all do that. And I love that, like, from Felicity, there's an immediate connectivity of she's one of us. I think it's what we love about Felicity. She's the every woman. I was going to say every man. You can really connect with her and go, yes, I see pieces of me in Felicity, and she makes you want to be more of the Felicity number two when the moments come in. I really like that about her. I think she's one of the strongest characters on the show. I was so worried that she was going to be the one in the grave, and I'm so glad that she's not. So can we jump to this?
I know who it is.
I'm guessing we're probably going to say the same person, but go ahead.
Her mom.
Yep.
Yeah, it's got to be her mom. No ifs, ands, or buts in my mind. Because, one, you think about it, that's great scene when Oliver gets back in a limo and she's there and she's alive, but she's like, kill him.
Yep.
When she's telling him to drop the no kill code, there's only one person that she would do that for. And the reason I'm guessing also the mom is because Captain Lance, betrayed him. Because what does Damien Dark do? He doesn't kill you. He kills the ones you love. So he realizes Captain Lance is working with the Green Arrow, so he kills his girlfriend. It's got to be who it is. And I'm sad to see the mom go because she is actually a really cool character. Every time they bring her in, I do chuckle with her, and I think it's kind of neat with the weird dynamic that's going on. But I'm glad it's her, not her daughter.
We mentioned this week's episode. Let's talk about that real quick, because it's one of the things I love about this show, and it does it well. I think this is what I loved about Smallville back in the day. I think Arrow's kicked it to 11, but it benefits highly from the fact that you got your writers now that can take a look at what worked at shows like Smallville, especially in its later seasons. Smallville always had this big overarching storyline going on, right, that we were loving during the season. But they'd have these contained one-shot episodes or two-parter episodes that had this really big story in them that really had a great beginning, middle, and ending. Case in point, the Calculator story. Great beginning, middle, ending, introducing the Calculator into this Arrow TV universe, but also the Calculator's link to Felicity, that this is Felicity's dad. And the casting of the Calculator was absolutely phenomenal, because if there's one voice I would put on the guy from the comics, it would be this. The mannerisms, the way the actor carried himself. I just really felt it was a well-produced episode. The actor was phenomenal, very believable version of the Calculator, coming at it from a point of strength, but yet at the same time being that same snivelly character that we know him to be in the comics. He is a strong character because of the fact that nowadays, tech connects you with everything, and it plays off a lot of the fears that people have about tech. That he basically could have taken out the entire city in one sweep.
Yeah.
And I really loved that sense of danger, and it did serve as a purpose to kind of get Felicity not only back in the zone. I actually thought Felicity went one step beyond this episode, which is interesting. She's in a wheelchair, but I actually think she became something more this episode. And I love that character development. It's similar to the week before where we had like a John Diggle episode that kind of helped him become something more. I think, especially with the flashbacks onto the present day and kind of the relationship with his brother and all that stuff, I thought this was a great Felicity-focused episode that took her up a notch, including the fact that every character, I think, really had a great moment this episode. Yeah. It really was just a very well-produced beginning, middle, and ending of an episode.
Well, things aren't going too well for Thea. Right. The character itself had some cool stuff, but personally, she's not looking too good.
But it was a great character-driven episode for her.
I know.
Because what happened with her and Roy, I thought was phenomenal.
I know. But with the Calculator, dude, that was just a one. I gotta admit, I got swerved. I'll fully admit I did not see that being Felicity's dad. Completely got me. And I was just like, when they did it, I was like, oh my God, that is awesome. I think that for me is, I've gotten so many moments in this series, and same thing in Flash where I'm yelling at the TV, I'm hooping and hollering, I'm high-fiving, I'm like, this is awesome kind of stuff where you get those little flashing moments. And it was funny because when he was first in the audience after, and Felicity's doing her presentation. He's sitting right next to Ollie. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of neat that the Calculator is sitting right next to Green Arrow. Neither one realized it. I'm like, that's kind of cool. I like that. And then you had to add one more reveal that he's her father. I was like, oh, that is awesome. That, again, you throw out the kick it up to 11 type of notch, and those are the stuff. And now looking forward, what's going to happen down the line? Are they going to figure each other out? Is she going to figure him out? Vice versa. What is going to be the deal with that? I don't know, man. This is some cool stuff going on, and they keep teasing, and it's one of the things I love about both shows. They keep doing these great teases for the next episode. It gets you excited. It gets you amped up. And a lot of stuff with the comic books, you'll sit there, you'll finish an issue going, man, I want to read it now. Same thing with the TV show. You get done watching the show and you want to watch the next one. I think it's a wonderful thing to have going on right now.
Yeah, your point is well met. there's this sense of, I want the next episode. I want the next installment. I want to keep following the story. They do a really, really good job of balance on that with this show. I do want to talk about, if we could, a little bit, John Diggle.
Yeah.
There's a character who, wow, has been such a great addition in this programming. I loved last week's episode, seeing the focus on him, the focus on the flashbacks shifting to him and kind of giving us a little bit more of his backstory, and seeing who he is in his relationship with his brother. And that the relationship between two brothers, I mean, you're in a similar boat that I am, in the sense that, you know, I've got a brother, you've got two brothers. We're all different. I mean, for as much as the fact we've been raised by the same family, you know, you have certain qualities that are different, certain interests that are different, certain skill sets that make you different. And a lot of times there's this assumption that you want to, like, kind of pigeonhole your brothers into the same, or your family members into the same path that you're on, because you think, well, this is so right for me, it should be right for them. That doesn't always work. And sometimes it puts undue pressure on the relationship, whether you're older, younger, or whatever. It goes that way. Really interesting to see that development, because I thought that Diggle episode, I connected with. I'm kind of like, you know, as I've gotten older, I've come to really appreciate my brother for his differences and who he is, and not looked at the fact that the choices that he makes are bad, or the choices that I make are bad. Come to value the differences between the two of us as being strengths that we can both play off of, which I think has only helped our relationship to the point where, you know, I consider my brother a friend now, which is interesting. You know, you can be brothers, but it's harder to be friends when you are. I enjoy the fact that I am a friend with my brother now, once I've checked my own ego at the door. You know, I mean, I think those are things that you do over time when you learn to appreciate it. I thought this episode with Diggle was very reminiscent of that type of thought process. Great writing that I think people can really connect with any kind of siblings. I would imagine male or female, you can connect with that type of episode. Very well written.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, see, I'm the youngest, so I'm the younger brother. So I am Andy in this storyline. Really, my one brother Dave, he's military. My brother Bill, sci-fi comic geek. So I'm kind of a mesh of the two in my personality, and those were always the stuff, my connection with my two brothers. And when I was in college, you know, Dave was the upperclassman. I was, you know, and it was always the weird thing where, if ever I did anything right, you know, on the military side, like, oh, you're just like your brother. Or when I messed up, like, oh, looks like the apple falls far from the tree. You're nothing like him. I'm like, so there was never anything that was me. You know, it was, if I did something good, it was because I was Dave's brother. If I did something bad, it was because I was an idiot. So it's kind of a weird thing. And I empathized immediately with Andy, how having this super brother who is this hoorah military hardcore, you know, just that perfect guy who everyone looks at, oh, he's the best of the best. You know, I completely understood that, and I felt with him and I empathized with him. And it was a really neat episode seeing why he did his choices and then his return. And I was glad to see how they, because they took multiple episodes to play it out. And it wasn't even just Arrow giving, Diggle the advice. It was his wife. It was, Canary. It was everybody giving him, his supporting cast, giving him the life lessons he needs. Hey, you need to be that guy. You need to be there for your brother. And that was the thing that pulled Andy out, that pulled him back and brought out the good in him. I thought those were kind of a really cool moments.
Yeah, and that pressure that you're talking about, I think is something I'm pretty guilty of with my brother, which is it's kind of funny because you take a look at when you're in the older brother role, you tend to go, well, I got all the answers and all that. You forget the fact that you have your own issues. I'm far from perfect. I make my share of mistakes, and honestly, the truth of the matter is, a lot of my weaknesses are my brother's strengths, so it's interesting to be able to look at and appreciate that right now. In your case, it's interesting to take a look at the fact that you've got two brothers. So trying to, develop, and it's funny knowing you like I do, I see very distinct. I've met both of your brothers and I know both of their roles and things like that, but you are kind of the one who has the rich identity to me, where I'm like, I know very much who you are. I know your morals. I know your skill set. and things like that, where I could see being in your position where it was like, trying to find your own identity in the midst of all that's kind of difficult. But for people that know you, you're probably one of the more defined people, I would say. As far as very specific qualities and consistent qualities as far as who you are. And I mean that totally as a compliment. Because I think that's rare when you could look at somebody and go, wow, I know Jim's moral code. I mean, you've got a very strong, defined sense of moral self, which I think is a very unique quality of yours that I've always felt, actually, since day one that I've met you. You're an easy guy to figure out on that sense, as far as being just a good guy in general. And I think that's something that you kind of exude that not all people do.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I do take that as a compliment. And it is weird because there have been times in my life when, there are times when you sit there and you look at yourself and you think you're just an absolute piece of garbage. And there have been a lot of times in my life when I've absolutely been just disgusted with myself. And those are the moments where you have that, I'm going to go down one path. I'm either going to be in the light or in the dark. And those times, those are where, the influences of my two brothers, of my sister, of my mother, my father, of my friends that have turned me towards the light, have turned me towards positive and tried to be more positive, tried to be more high energy. This show, has really helped me out in ways that I don't think I could properly explain, to people about just how helping me keep that positive outlook. We started the show, I was unemployed. I just got fired from the job that I thought was going to be my life and my existence. I was at absolute rock bottom of my being. And you're like, hey, come on, why don't you try this? Oh, sure. Okay. I was thinking it'd just kill time. And then it started energizing me. And then I got the new job. And then I'm pushing through the new job. I'm working through, the show is kicking off, and everything is just this energy was going through in such a positive way. And this was part of that journey. And I think that is something that that Arrow has really shown in all the characters, how their life has this, you go the dark path or the light path, and you always are turning to the light. And Ollie is a great character with that, where he's taken lives, he's killed, he's made mistakes, and he holds on to that guilt, and he's got to let that go. They talked about it in the episode where that's his superpower, that he bears the weight of the guilt on his shoulders. He bears the weight of the world. And that's something that he's got to deal with and he's got to go through it. I think that's kind of an awesome message for people, that you're going to have this slip ups, you're going to have this darkness, but you got to push through and you got to embrace the light. And that's it's funny to talk about how Arrow is the darker of the two Arrow and Flash stories, but in reality there is still that light. And I think that is a great balance on how they're showing it.
It's funny, you were talking about when we started the show, the fact that you weren't working at the time. We've referenced it on the show multiple times about how that was like maybe a convenient piece as far as for recording this podcast, but that wasn't why I chose you or why I asked you first. I asked you because I knew I could count on you, which is a distinct difference when you're trying to do something like this and you're eager and excited, because I was excited to podcast. I really wanted to podcast and start something regularly. I wanted to start with somebody that I knew I could count on if I wanted to do the first episode, that I knew would be there and would be enthusiastic about being there. And You're the guy that I would go to in an instance, like, if I need somebody to do something and to be there for me, you're the guy. That's a interesting quality, to be able to know that somebody's reliable. You're a reliable person. I've been very lucky over the years in friends that I've made, but certainly a quality I would think of. You're one of the short list of first people I would call in any situation because of the reliability of who you are. And I would say most people who know you and know you really well, that's probably one of the first things they would go to with you, is your reliability, because I think that's always been consistent with you.
Oh, you keep this up, I'm going to start crying.
That's what I'm going for, actually. I want to put a little soft music on there. It's a very special Jim moment. Can you make a grown sensei cry? Speaking of shows that make you want to cry, let's talk a little bit about Flash. I love the distinction between Flash and Arrow. They're the big two of the week for me, always. I love all the other shows, don't get me wrong, and it's not diminishing them by saying that. I think because of the interactivity between these shows since the get-go, since the Flash concept was introduced, I always consider these shows linked. And even though Flash will guest star on Supergirl, it's not going to be the same. And I don't mean that in a negative. I think it's super cool. It's like Constantine guest starring on Arrow. It's different. It's just a different sort of relationship. These are the brave and the bold. You know, the two characters together are the yin and the yang in their relationships. This stuff with Flash and the whole way that Barry, talk about moral code. Barry is your consummate good guy. That's not to say that he's perfect. That's not to say he doesn't get angry. That's not to say that he doesn't have his irrational moments and he isn't human. He doesn't make mistakes along the way. His relationship, case in point. But what I really love about Barry Allen is his humanity. He is such a human guy and tries to take everything he learned from his real father, from his real mother, from Joe, from every friend that he's made along the way, and embraces those qualities and just really at the end of the day tries to do the right thing, even when it is the most difficult thing to do. I think what's going on with Harry right now, Harrison Wells from Earth 2, is a great example of that. It would have been very easy for them as a team in the most recent episode to judge Harrison Wells and say, listen, dude, you're stealing Barry's speed. We're done with you. You know, you betrayed us. You didn't stick with the team. But Barry's explanation is saying, look, we've all done this. And, you know, so what are we, hypocritical now? Harrison's trying to save his daughter. You know, he wasn't doing this maliciously against us. He was doing this to save someone close to him. Referred to Cisco having similar issues. The whole team at one point in time has had to cross lines in order to save someone close. They've done things that have made them question themselves in the process. So when they made that decision together, and he just said, you know, we need to make this decision as a team. We are a team. So when it comes to Harry, we need to make this decision, but we need to do it being fair and honest with who we are, where we've been, who he is, and why he was doing what he did with his daughter. The fact that Harrison made the decision to tell Flash, listen, my daughter's on the line, but I got to tell you the truth. I've been doing this to you, and here's why. Harrison's conscience got the better of him. It separated him from Reverse Flash immediately. We got to see who Harrison Wells is at his core, and the fact that by taking this chance, he's now got a team to go back with him to Earth 2 to try and save his daughter. I am so geeking out for the Earth 2 episode because of the Team Flash concept. We've got a Team Arrow on the Arrow show. It's very different than Team Flash. That's great writing. That's great acting. When you can look at every single person on the teams, and even though they've both got these great, well, tight-knit teams, because of the fact that each character involved in those teams are different, the feel, the tone, and the way the team deals with a situation is drastically different, even though they're two superhero teams. I love that aspect of both of these shows. The distinctions between the two of them, I think, are just as interesting as what makes them similar.
Yeah, oh, God, yeah. It is funny. I'm so glad you brought up the fact about Barry with the not judging Harrison Wells, because I absolutely loved that speech that he gave to the team. Because, you know, that, for me, that was a hoorah moment. That was a Barry Allen moment. That was just the constant optimist, the person who inspires hope. You know, I was sitting there and I was just cheering as he was doing, because that's what the heroes do. That's how you handle it. You can't abandon a whole world. You got to understand why the guy was doing it. You got to look at that. And I love the fact that when he's bringing up how he did bring up the Cisco, saying, hey, you know, when your brother's life was on the line, you helped them, and we don't hold that against you. And within one breath of each other, even before, just so it wouldn't enter Cisco's head that maybe Barry's holding the grudge, he's not holding the grudge. He's like, you had to do that. Joe, if it had been Iris, what would you have done? And and it's, you know, and I was sitting there and I was just like, yes. And as they're going on, I didn't know they were going to do the Earth 2 crossover, but I'm sitting there going, they're going to cross over. They're going to cross over. They're going to 2. And you kind of suspected, but you never knew. And then right then and there, when they was like, we're going to Earth 2. I loved just that, you know, that moment and just that feeling, because Harrison Wells, throughout the actor who plays Harrison Wells, both his original version, then the Earth 2 Harry, and just he does just a great job with that emotional spectrum. And I love just seeing the guilt on him as he's stealing the powers to save it. And, just when the couple times when he flashes, when he, no pun intended, when he has those flashes of anger at Barry just because of the guilt. And then finally, when it reaches that point where he's had enough and he's got to just step up and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And even when Barry calls him on him, he goes, remember, I told you, there's going to come a time when I'm going to have to choose between you and my daughter. And every single time, without hesitation, I'm going to choose my daughter. I told you I was going to betray you. I love just how he just, he stuck by his guns and he stuck with it. And then even at the point where he's like, send me back, seal up the thing, I'll deal with this. Knowing his daughter was dead. Right there, that's the death sentence for his daughter. He knows the only thing keeping his daughter alive is the fact that he could potentially steal Speed Force from the Flash. Those are, again, hero moments where you step up and say, hey, this is for the greater good. And I love just how this Team Arrow concept's coming together and how this Team Arrow is coming to be. I think it's not Team Arrow, Team Flash. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You're right. That's the part that I really love about it. People finding out that he's the Flash is very different than people finding out how Ollie is Arrow. It's just because of the different tone of the two worlds. It's so drastically different. Speaking of members of the cast, Wally West. His addition to the show, I think, has been absolutely phenomenal. Mainly because the West family has been so well developed in this world, with Barry being a part of that family. I like that it's a little twist on how it happens in the comics, and Wally's introduction that way as being the new son introduced into that world and trying to find his own place. I like his thirst for speed.
Yes.
It's just kind of a different sort of take on Wally. I love the actor. I just think he does the role of the, I don't want to say brat because that's kind of overstating it. He's had a tough life in there in the sense that, he was raised with mom. It was him and mom against the world. Mom getting sick has become I don't want to say burden on him, but has become a part of who he is. He's had to be really the father figure there, the parent, and helping mom and being the equal partner there to make sure that she got the help that she needed, not knowing about this other family that he had and that he could be a part of. Now all of a sudden you've got Blam, this brand new family that you're dealing with in there. You don't have the history with them. He doesn't know dad. He doesn't know the sister. He wasn't raised with them. It's not something that you just instantly paintbrush and go, now we're family, yay. It doesn't work that way. I like that the show is addressing that. That I've found very, very interesting in its presentation and what it's doing. The fact that it's not ignoring the fact that this guy has not been raised with these people. He's trying. He's becoming friends with them first. I like that Joe pulled back and just said, let's be buddies first. Let's get to know each other on that end and see where we go from there. Joe wanted to be instant dad, and I like that they didn't make that an easy thing. Wally's not all of a sudden the prodigal son returning. Joe didn't know about him. There is no history there. That, to me, is really smart writing, very realistic writing, because that's really a thing. You haven't been raised with people. You didn't grow up with them. You don't know them. And the show embracing that and making that a part of the family history and the dynamic, I think, has made it a very rich and interesting relationship. And this Wally is really, I'm very captivated by Wally. I think it's a very cool character to bring into the show, the way that they're handling him.
Oh, big time. Big time. And it's, it was funny because how you talked about how Joe, was backed off and all that, but I loved how Iris called him on it.
Oh, yeah.
And that for me, again, shows great dynamic of the supporting cast. The fact that, because as she's going, I'm like, yeah, of course, and then even Barry makes the reference how he was strict, but he's like, hey, it's being strict when it's out of love is okay. You learn that lesson. And I love how the fact that by the end of the episode, Joe's like, hey, I'm not your buddy. I am your father. This is what you got to do. And there was that great moment between them where, Wally starts to become part of that family. His sister is in the hospital. He's going to sit by her side and be there for her because that's what family does. You sacrifice for others. And then even when Joe got the call from Barry about the stuff going on, he's like, go, I got it. And I thought that was a great dynamic right there. And those are some moments where if you didn't have the stuff before, if you didn't have the snotty, version of Wally, the moments of like that wouldn't have such big impact. And it wouldn't have such that dynamic moment. Like, yeah, the West family's coming together. And then the obsession with speed, you're thinking down the line, Kid Flash is coming, somehow power transference or whatnot. Not exactly sure, but eventually this kid's going to have some speed force in him. And I'm looking forward to those moments, and I'm looking forward to this character being around, looking forward to the Iris and Barry relationship starting up, even though I was sad to see Patty go because they did a great thing with her, but they left it open for her return.
Sure.
So a couple seasons down the line, she could come back. So they're firing on all cylinders with this story, with this character, and just the development of who they are and why they are.
Does it have to be a couple seasons down the line?
What, for Patty?
Uh-huh.
Only reason why I say a couple seasons is because she's going to college and she's going to schooling, so it's going to take some time.
Right.
That's the only reason why I say a couple seasons. They could bring her back, next episode, and I'd be okay with it, But it's still just, again, you think logically, they're going to have to give her some time. And I think that will be interesting because that'll give us time for the Barry and Iris relationship maybe to then get romantic again. Maybe just as Barry and Iris are starting to get together, starting to develop something, hey, guess what? The ex-girlfriend comes back in town. Let's really kick it up as a little bit craziness, especially because the ex-girlfriend also knows the secret. She knows that Barry is the Flash. She knows everything that's going on. So I think that, that's why I'm thinking a couple seasons down the line, it would make for a really cool story for Patty to come back.
The brilliant casting of Patty is she made me a believer in that relationship. Like, I was Team Barry, Team Patty, even though I was Team Barry, Team Iris before that. I think that's hard to do in a show, to be able to shift your loyalties, if that makes sense. To be able to see, wow, this is really a positive relationship for Barry, and not take anything away from Iris. Like, I still love the character of Iris. It just made sense the way that they were going with that relationship. And that's something that made it, I think, very realistic and interesting to me. The fact that you kind of look at that and go, Grant Gustin as Barry Allen could not be better casting. I think, when you take a look at, he's got this Peter Parker Spider-Man factor. And what I mean about that is, I think if you're going to cast the right Peter Parker and Spider-Man, they've got to be immediately likable. They've also got to be vulnerable and human, and yet feel strong as well. Those three qualities, the right mix of those makes for the right character. The Flash is the same thing. You have to see the strength, never give up attitude of the Flash, yet you have to see the vulnerability of the Flash as well. You have to see the guy that you can sit down and have coffee with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the whole coffee shop thing that they do with that place, I think is just so awesome. Because he is your everyman, your guy that you just want to hang with. And it's not the intense, dark brooding, I'm going to throw an arrow through you. I think the casting of Stephen Amell and how they handle Arrow should feel different. It's the distinction between the two. While I like that Ollie's world has sort of softened in his relationships with Team Arrow, in particular Felicity, he's always going to be Ollie. And he should be. I think you can see the character evolve and change to a certain extent, but I never want to see him light switch and go, oh, Ollie's just like Barry now. That doesn't make any sense, nor should it. His experiences to get to this path are so vastly different. I don't ever want to see that. I like the distinction between them. On the other hand, I don't want to see Barry ever go so dark that he's Arrow. I think the distinction between the two is the contrast. When you see them together and their interactions together are so much more rich because of the fact that they're so well defined and they feel like real people. Both of these actors have got two characters right now that feel fully fleshed out. They feel as real as anybody else that you would know. And that's great writing.
Amen. It's funny, as you're going, I'm just nodding my head saying, yes, 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 yes. This for the Flash, for the supporting cast, all this stuff, constantly saying just how much I loved the casting and just love the different characters on all that and all the levels, Joe, Iris, come on, Cisco, my man Cisco, absolutely love the guy. It's, you got a great story and a great cast being told here. And it's funny because your Peter Parker analogy, when you first threw it out there, I was like, what? And then as you're going, like, yeah, there is that energy that Barry has. And that's something that again, it's, for me, it's always going back to Blackest Night when, Barry shows up and he's like, tell him the Justice League is here, and he tries and inspires hope, and he ends up getting a blue ring, because he inspires hope. And I always see Barry as that hope, as that I can always do this. I can run fast enough to do this. I can save everybody. And that's the stuff that I love about Barry. Those are the Superman qualities I love, where he's in the middle of the fight and he catches people, or he does this and he does that. Those are those qualities that I love about Superman. Barry has that. And I loved in this last episode, in the Tar Pit episode, where he's going and he rescues Wally, then he saves the scum bad guy, and as he's running to save Iris, he's just not fast enough. And I love the look on his face, because you're just like, I'm watching this going, oh no, not the throat. I see her hitting their shoulder. I'm like, okay, she can live off of that one. She'll survive that one, but you just see the look on his face. And even though the actor's wearing the mask, because masks do cover some of the emotional, you could really just see that heartbreak. And I think that's something that the actor's really given us, those happy, when he's got that grin on his face, he's got that Barry Allen grin, or when he's got the oh no look, he goes through such great emotional spectrums that this guy has given us. And it's something that I'm very happy that we're getting quality acting in a comic book TV show. This isn't just about the cool stuff that the superhero can do. And this is a statement I'm making across the board on all the titles. We are getting serious quality acting out of these actors. And it's something that I'm very happy with. And I think that's why non-comic book readers are reading this thing, because of this. It's not just about what cool stuff can the Flash do this week. No, it's about his relationship with Iris. It's about Joe's relationship with his son that he never had. It's about Wells trying to rescue his daughter, but also Wells dealing with the guilt that he is stealing the Speed Force from Barry. All these different stuff that they're pulling into this one episode about the superhero is what makes Flash such an awesome show.
I think both of these shows benefit from what, and all these shows, I should say, benefit from what Smallville did. I think Smallville was the science lab of all this. Because if you take a look at the multiple seasons of Smallville, they were working on a formula to try and find the right balance of strong character drama that's accessible to a larger audience, while at the same time finding the right amount of lore to put into your fans who care about the history, the comics, the stories that inspired the tales that are happening on the screen. And I think it on its better seasons, it found that sweet spot of big overarching stories while having single issue stories that were, that really had that great beginning, middle, and ending that you're like, yeah, that was a great issue. I think Smallville found that right sweet spot formula, never being too caught up in its own lore to the point where it was off-putting. It embraced the lore, made geek out moments, had helmets and things popping up and little references that some of which were throwaway, some of which they explained in depth because it benefited a larger audience. That's the key. I think Arrow and Flash do this really well. All of these shows do it really well, where they're beholden to the lore only in the sense of when it makes sense to make the show unique and to really get to know these characters to the point where it's accessible to everybody. But they don't throw in like random geeky references and overdo them. Certain things are a wink and a nod that are meant to be a wink and a nod, and they're just left as that. If you explain certain things too much, then you start to lose an audience. We're like, oh man, we're getting too caught up in the geek here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For us, all we need is certain things in the background every so often. A little, nod to this part of history or this city or this particular writer. They don't need to explain that on the show. Sometimes the corner of two streets being two comic creators is all you need. And you just kind of sit there and go, wow, that was really cool that they did that wink and a nod to us, because that's what that was for. You don't get so caught up in that you alienate a larger audience. These shows find such a great balance in that. I still reference the fact that my father and brother, to go into Gotham, both watching, where my dad was watching Gotham, my brother watches Gotham, not because of me, just because they started watching it and got into the show as a crime drama. And I think that accessibility says a lot. These are two people that, if you said, are they Batman fans? I was not remotely. They don't know any. They grew up with a Batman fan, but they don't know anything about it. I like the fact that they were asking me questions based on their own personal enjoyment of the series, not because they needed that information. That's a difference. And I think that part of it, you mentioned people at work all the time that you talk to about shows like Walking Dead and from DC television and the films and stuff like that. That kind of organic conversation is far more inclusive than, I'm going to tell you about issue number 47, page 23, and this cool moment that they screwed up on the television. I mean, it's, you can get into those real geeky discussions where you go, well, they veered off on Ra's al Ghul here, and here. That doesn't matter. What they've done is they've taken the core qualities of what make each of these characters work. They got them right for the screen. So it embraces the comic fan while embracing a larger audience. I love that. This is the type of thing that's going to keep these characters around for the next 50 years. It's the fact that we're embracing multimedia with these characters, getting them all over the place. We act like this is new, but if you look back at comic book history, look back at radio shows. Radio shows used to have Batman and Superman, used to have, Batman and Robin, I should say, and Superman. Then to have them cross over. A lot of their first crossovers happened on radio. Yeah. I mean, this is not a new thing. People have always wanted these characters to go multimedia. Superman on the screen and Batman on the screen, they had the old serials, that we often forget about. We jumped to Batman 66, but the serials and the old cartoons, if you take a look at the Fleischer, I still say those Superman Fleischer cartoons, they hold up incredibly well today. When you watch those, they feel like, you could put them out today, and very little of it feels dated. I think the animation quality is that good that you can look at those and go, wow, that's really, I'm still in awe of those today. I think it's really impressive. I still love the serials. I think the classic serials, what they did for that time without having the special effects that you have today, I think were really impressive. These are characters that have always transcended multimedia. This is not something new. We often forget that part. And I like the fact that this is continuing into this new generation, because I want to, when I'm 90, I want to still be here, but I also want to still be able to enjoy these characters. I want to enjoy them in comics. I want to enjoy them on television and film. I want to get crotchety about the fact that the Flash on TV is not the same as my Flash on TV that I watched a few years ago. I like that kind of stuff. I like the idea that could be a thing down the road. So I'm glad to see these properties continuing on and being really retooled for a new generation without throwing out the window what we like about him. This is you can read a Silver Age Barry Allen comic and look at this guy and go, this is the guy they're writing about now.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Oh, definitely. And it's funny because, like, my mom and my sister watch Supergirl. And they started watching not because of, the superhero, because of me. They started watching because of the actor who plays Finn. They've seen him. He's a big time Broadway guy, and my mom and my sister are big time Broadway people and musical theater and all that kind of stuff. So they're, when he was going to be on the TV show, Mary immediately jumped on it and said, "Oh, Mom, you want to watch this because of him." So Mom started watching, but they're loving Calista Flockhart on it. They're loving Supergirl on it. They're loving the stories, and they're loving just the drama that's going on that show. Our buddy Joe is, and him and his kids are watching Flash, and they're loving Flash. And it's not because of, they didn't start watching Flash because of us. They started watching Flash because, hey, let's see this. Oh, this is pretty cool. And they're digging what's going on in the Flash universe and who he is and what he's about. So this is a thing where they're crafting solid stories. And I think that is the key to making television successful. You have to have that solid base. You have to have a real, true drama.
You know, by the way, it's Win, not Finn. I almost think you're channeling your inner Star Wars.
Yeah.
It was win shot. No, only because we're going to have, I know how this works. We're going to have people emailing or calling in going, Jim called him Finn and you let it go. No, it was Win. Because Winslow Shot Jr.
I'm thinking of Finn Balor.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah. I just read an article about how he got hurt at his ankle. So that's what's actually running through my head.
That's funny. I really love the character casting on that particular show. One of the things that I think has really worked about all this is there anybody right now in any of these shows that you're like, that was a poor casting choice? And I'm asking that honestly. I'm not setting you up. I'm
giving it some honest thought, to be honest with you. I want to make sure I play this out because I don't want to. The quick and easy answer is no, but I'm going through it. It's funny because even like with supporting cast, you know, like sometimes if they kill off somebody, I'm not happy with that. Like killing off, you know, Amanda Waller, I wasn't happy because she was such a great character. And I'm hoping that somehow she survived a bullet to the head. But she's tough, but I can't see that happening. You know, but there's, you know, just trying to go through it. I really don't think there's ever any time when I was like, he just didn't, or she didn't just seem right for me. I think they did a really quality on the casting and a lot of things that, you know, like with the characters, you know, I'm seeing it. It's no longer about this actor playing this character. This character, like Captain Cold. He's no longer the guy from Prison Break playing Captain Cold. He is Captain Cold. Right. He really embraced that. You know, he really became that. You know, Calista Flockhart is not, you know, Calista Flockhart playing Cat Grant. She is Cat Grant. Yeah. That is who she is. You know, James Olsen is James Olsen. These characters, these actors and actresses have embraced the role and it's quality writing, quality acting, all that stuff that makes you look at it and say, that's not somebody else playing this. That is, them. Like, Stephen Amell being Green Arrow. And I loved how, you know, I'm going to throw another wrestling reference in there where, you know, the one wrestling character, Stardust, was, you know, saying, that's the Green Arrow. I'm going to fight him. And they did that whole thing with the wrestling, with him appearing at, you know, and wrestling and actually those two having a match. But it wasn't like the commentary you're saying, that's an actor playing the character. But the wrestler is so kind of out there that he's like, no, that's really the Green Arrow. And to be honest, there are times when I'm looking at, you know, when he's portraying it and when he's being it, that I'm not thinking of it as an actor playing the Green Arrow. I'm thinking of, I'm looking at the Green Arrow. I mean, referenced earlier when, you know, when the Flash has that Barry Allen smile, when he's got that, hey, everything's gonna be okay, guys, you know, that fun, friendly guy, that's the Barry Allen Flash. That's not Grant doing a Barry Allen Flash. He is Barry Allen. I think that for me has been the strength of all these shows across the board, where I look at it and I say, yes, this is that character. This isn't an actor portraying that character. This is the actual person. That is great acting, though. You know, in the end, you get to the point where people believe you are that character. I think that's a tenement to acting. It's one of the reasons why I'm glad. I don't think a lot of these people are worried about being typecast. Here's the nice thing about the internet nowadays. Even though we're saying that, like, Stephen Amell is Ollie Queen, I like his acting enough now that if he's in another project, I will go and see that project because of the fact that, wow, he really was so good in Arrow that I want to see what he does in other projects. Same thing with, and I would actually attribute that to any of the cast in any of these shows that I'm really enjoying right now, because of their ability to make me believe they are the characters who they're portraying. So I think we're in an era nowadays, and I hope we're in an era nowadays, where it used to be hard to get involved in geek culture shows because there was this impression that fans would not let go of you being these characters. While I think there is still a point to that, I think that's pretty normal in film in general. When you're on something, if you do it and do it well, people should believe you are that character. I like the fact that nowadays with the internet connectivity, like Stephen Amell does this really cool thing where he interacts in social media with the fans. So his identity as far as who he is when he's not Arrow is you know, a thing. And he's put himself out there like that. And I think, you know, your actors are doing that nowadays, where there's very similar to how comic creators are and different things like that. There's more of a fan outreach.
and fans getting to know you as a person. And I like that part because I think it adds a different sort of community to the work that they're doing. I think it has stepped up the fan interactivity on these programs. I love the fact that I feel like, our feedback is being considered in the choices that they're making, but they're not beholden to us either, because I think that would be a huge mistake. I like being surprised by these programs. I like the fact that they'll take things in different directions. You mentioned Amanda Waller's death. I like that I feel right now, I don't know that that's for sure. But if it is, I'm like you. I'm kind of like, I don't know how I feel about the choice of killing her off if they did that. But knowing Argus and Amanda Waller and how they've handled it right now, all bets are off. Yeah. Especially with this show, because Black Canary referenced it on the most recent episode, where she was talking about Roy, and the question was, "Is that really Roy?" And she's like, "Well, do we know it's not somebody who is able to shapeshift or pretend to be Roy?" And I'm poorly paraphrasing what she said, but that was the premise she was going for, because she's saying we've seen a lot of crazy stuff, and I really loved that thought process. And that's something I think is just interesting about these shows right now, is that they're willing to play with the fans' emotions. They are doing it judiciously. I did like that in this episode, Roy didn't die. Roy got to go off, and to me, the escape was that much more intense because I thought there was a possibility they'd kill Roy. I'm glad that they didn't. I'm glad that Roy escaped, because that moment, there was that explosion when that's going off and he's sliding out. I'm like, yes! There was a real sense. I don't know if it was the same for you. For me, I felt a real sense of danger for Roy in that moment. And the fact that Roy had to step up and solve that problem himself, because they painted Roy into the corner. Roy can't come back to the city, because if Roy comes back, it immediately broadcasts that Oliver Queen is the Green Arrow. The fact that Roy is off the table, they pinned that whole thing on Roy. It was Roy. So I love how they've played this whole thing out. It's really the intensity of these shows, I think, is something that's so interesting to me. I can't wait to see what they do on Earth 2. In The Flash, I can't wait to see where Arrow goes this season. These are things that are interesting. Jim, if you don't mind, our next episode, we're going to talk about iZombie. I don't want to rush that discussion. And we'll get back to some comic chat as well. We have to do a little bit of a shorter episode this time around because I want to get this out on time to our listening audience. So this one's going to be a little bit quicker, but we'll save iZombie for next week, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about it, because I'm loving that show too. Yeah, and I really want to geek out about it.
Yeah.
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
I would like to shout out our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show, so feel free to call in. We actually have a very special voicemail for our next episode from Jim with some Vegas stories.
Even Las Vegas.
Yeah, so we're going to be sharing some of those as usual. This is a rich tradition on the show, but we love having you part of the show. So if there's anything going on in comics right now, with DC Rebirth, with television, film, anything you want to geek out about or shout out on the show, please feel free to call in and be a part of our next episode. Want to shout out our show website, actually, RagingBullets.com. That's a place where you're going to find out news about new releases of the podcast episode. We do feed that into Twitter and our Facebook fan page, so it's a place to find your news on what's going on the show. Speaking of Facebook, I want to shout out that amazing Facebook group community and all the people that are a part of making that a must-stop place to be. And I just want to thank everyone once again for being a part of that community. I encourage you to join it because it's just a great place to hang out and chat pop culture, and it's a wonderful, safe community for that. Positive, just a lot of fun, just having fun, relaxing, enjoying these things that we all know and love. We are available on Google Plus as well, so you can find us on wherever you're looking for social media updates on our particular podcasts. Jim, sponsoring this episode is once again DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. What's going on at DCBS?
We got some great bundles, and they're continuing to honor the Vertigo bundle. So thank you, DCBS. All 15 titles on the Vertigo line right now. Regular price would be $59.85, but 50% saving on this bundle. Yours for only $29.85.
I'm glad they're working with these companies to do these additional discounts on newer titles, just to give people a chance to get, decide what titles they want to get attached to. I think it's really great that that relationship's strong between them and the companies. I don't know how that works out on their end or works out with the companies in question, that they're able to pull off those amazing deals, but I applaud them for doing it to support new work, just because it is hard nowadays in your budget to explore new titles. Comics are expensive, and by providing those discounts, it's just a chance to try things out to see what's the right fit for you. So I applaud DCB Service for doing that. I do want to remind everyone they're a digital partner. Whether you do Comixology or My Digital Comics, link those accounts and shop through their portal. It's key. You got to shop through their portal on their website, because when you do that, it takes 5% of those purchases and puts them towards your DCB service order. So I want to thank them for providing those opportunities over at InStockTrades.com. Want to remind everyone once again about the JLA Gods and Monsters hardcover, 50% off, only $11.49. Prez Paperback. If you haven't gotten a before, it's really good. There was 6 issues collected in it. It's good. Let's try that again. The Prez Trade Paperback, Volume 1, Corn Dog in Chief. It collects the 6 issues of this amazingly cool miniseries. And you and I were big fans of this, and I really loved that it was done as a really concise miniseries. Only $7.49. I mean, for less than $8, you can pick up the whole miniseries, which is really nice. And honestly, I think that miniseries reads really well in a collected format, so really cool to pick that up. Swamp Thing Volume 7 is also out. 45% off, only $9.34. They've got the Batman manga, 45% off in that volume. Only it's volume 3 of 3. There's 3 trade paperbacks. Volume 3 is now $8.24. So if you've haven't had a chance to read that Bat manga, have you read any of that, Jim?
No, I haven't actually. I may pick that up.
I've been picking that up digitally. It's awesome. But if you haven't picked it up digitally, it's probably better just to grab the 3 volumes and just read and enjoy it that way. It's really an interesting take on Batman, and written because I know you're a fan of anime and manga and that whole concept. So it's cool to see Batman done in that format with those sensibilities. It's just a different sort of comic story for Batman, and I do highly recommend it for people. I love Elseworlds. I've loved different creators touching on Batman because they put their own stamp on a concept that I've loved since my childhood. This is one of those where it's like, wow, they grab all of the tenements that we know and love about Batman, the necessary pieces, but then put a spin and a twist on it. Some of the stuff in there did feed some of Grant Morrison's things that he was doing in his run, and also in Batman Incorporated. So you can actually see some of the genesis of like Lord Deathman or something like that. Yeah, he's in there. These aren't just things he randomly pulled out of nowhere. He actually went into Batman lore from all over. So cool. I did a very international thing with what he's doing, which I think is really cool. So I want to shout that out as being something cool. But that's InStockTrades.com, your collected edition source. Jim, our next episode, we are going to talk iZombie real quick. Because we want to chat about that particular television show and how much we're enjoying that and what we're liking about it. We're also going to definitely go to Batman and Robin Eternal. There's a lot of books that we want to talk about, so you and I will regroup this week and kind of map out which books that we haven't touched on in a while that we'd like to chat about. I think we need to talk about some of the happenings going on with Superman. I'd also like to revisit Justice League. Big events going on in Darkseid War. So I think, for sure we should talk about those things. But then there's some other titles that we may want to touch on as well. But I do think we need to touch on Justice League. We need to touch on the events of Superman and what's going on in Batman and Robin Eternal.
Cool.
So we will see everyone next episode.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can 2 grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.